Hello, listeners. My name is Diana Georges, and I'm a senior at Bates College. And today, I'd like to make the argument for why school gardens should be seen as a form of restorative justice within the education system. My argument is that school gardens provide students with a space to create, heal, and work together. Such a tool addresses both social inequality and sustainability. To present my case, I'd like to both talk about the history and theory of restorative justice and the benefits of school gardens themselves. Then I'd like to culminate both of these ideas to show how school gardens do act as a tool for restorative justice. Let's get started. Let's begin with the theory and history of restorative justice. Basically, what you need to know is that restorative justice is a framework for relationship building and conflict resolution. It is based on the restitution between offenders and victims, but also the community and all others that are involved. The big move from our current justice system to a restorative justice one is how we define justice. We are moving from a justice definition that is rooted in punishment to one that is rooted in acknowledgement and care. It is critical to note that restorative justice has its roots in indigenous knowledge. A great example of this is a term from South Africa, Ubuntu, which means I am because we are, and we are because I am. Traditional forms of conflict resolution are based in restitution and reconciliation, not punishment. RJ is profoundly relational. It emphasizes bringing people together to correct the wrongdoing and to address all the needs and responsibilities of those who were involved on all sides of the harm. With RJ arising in the 1970s within the United States, there can be the question of why the sudden shift away from Western notions of justice. The answer might be simple. Western ways of thinking have led to a world that is separated, competitive, and subordinated. This rise in indigenous knowledge is partly due in needing a new world view to deal with today's problems and inequality, one in which community is central and the conflict process is not focused on punishment, but instead on our overarching aspirations as people. Here are some examples of major historical cases of restorative justice. One that is close to home is the Truth and Reconciliation Committee of the Wabanaki Confederacy in Maine, which was based on the South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee. The point of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee for the Wabanaki was to address and investigate the historical removal of Native children and their subsequent placement into white families throughout the foster care system, which led to devastating emotional and physical trauma to Wabanaki children. Through this process, history was able to be told accurately from the perspective of those that it harmed the most, and a path forward by all parties was able to be found. And not only that, but our schools mimic prisons in certain ways. First and foremost, the policing of Black bodies has existed since slavery, but it is constantly changing, and mass incarceration is one of its modern formations. For example, Black and brown people make up about 60% of prisoners in the United States, but they make up 20% of the US population. Richard Nixon's war on drugs and crime in the 70s had devastating effects on Black communities, especially on the children that were forced to grow up without members of their family, seeing no feasible way out of cycles of harm and poverty. The reality is that our criminal justice system does not acknowledge the structural inequality that contributes to crime, and therefore it does not seek to change those patterns. In modern day, through various laws, schools have become mimics of prison. Many public schools deal with police within the school, underfunding, being under-resourced, and with an exclusionary discipline style. Further, discipline in schools is racialized. Black and brown students face disproportionate rates of discipline in the form of detentions and suspensions. This repeated pattern of harm and exclusion has now led to students of color being funneled into the adult criminal justice system, which is known as the school-to-prison pipeline. Restorative justice seeks to break these cycles of oppression It recognizes the need for education to once more be a liberatory practice, not a system that contributes to inequality. Let's break down exactly what restorative justice in education can look like. As this graphic demonstrates, at the core of restorative justice in education is the belief that people are worthy and that through relation building, progress is possible. Please take a moment to read the visual. The specific changes that we would see within restorative justice in schools looks like this visual shows. For example, crime, instead of being seen as the breaking of a law or a rule, would be seen as harm being done to relationships and people. In the same way, justice would be seen as understanding the impact of that harm and repairing it in whatever way that everybody who is involved in the trauma finds acceptable. It is a community-based activity. In our current justice system, justice is seen as punishment to the offender, and that resolution is not decided by everybody who is involved, but is decided by a third party, such as a judge, a principal, a teacher. There is no opportunity to make amends and express remorse in the current justice system, but a restorative justice model imagines opportunities to make amends and express remorse, in which healing is possible for everybody involved. A good guide to restorative justice is this three-step process model, where the first step is storytelling and relationship building, followed by truth-telling and accountability, and ending with reparative action on the part of the harm doer. Okay, now that we understand what restorative justice is, its different theories and applications, let's look at gardening specifically as a form of RJ. We'll do this by continuing our comparison of prisons and schools. This information is taken from the thesis of a fellow Batesy, Carly Harris, in which she talks about the benefits and fallbacks of growing gardens in U.S. prisons. The gist of the story is that while gardens in U.S. prisons take a variety of forms, ranging in size, the method in which they are run, whether their purpose is vocational or meditative, and whether the food is provided to the prison itself or it's donated. Overall, what has been noticed is that there are positive effects on the mental and physical health of the prisoners, and that gardening can reduce their recidivism, which is the rate of reoffense and reincarceration. This is achieved by giving the prisoners skills and an activity to look forward to. However, considering the role that prisons play as a tool of institutionalized racism, it's necessary to consider how agriculture in prisons has been used as a form of neo-slavery and a continued capitalization of mostly Black bodies. An example of this exploitative kind of agriculture within a prison is Parchman Farms, also known as Mississippi State Penitentiary. But let's focus on a transformative and local example of gardening in a correctional facility. And this is Mountain View Correctional Facility in Maine. Here, their inmates have an orchard, a baking program, meal preparation, and composting that's all made with the goal of improving their mental and physical well-being. And the result is treating inmates as human beings who have the potential to change and leave the prison ready to reintegrate into society. Gardens have also been shown to have incredible effects for students in schools. And while I'm sure there's a wonderful op-ed out there that can explain all of this in depth, I'd like to highlight the three categories of benefits that students achieve. The first being physical. It's quite simple that just by being outdoors, students benefit. In the time of Zoom school, ever-increasing screen time, and endless sedentary learning, kids are spending less quality time moving around. They benefit greatly by being exposed to new stimuli, from the textures of soil to the smell of plants, and all the reward of their hard work and curiosity ends up being fresh, clean, and local food for their own consumption. Intellectually, an established gardening system in schools can move with students across grades. It takes what they are learning in the classroom and it applies it to real life, But more than that, it offers the chance to communicate and connect with community members and to learn about the cultural roots of the food around us. Not only that, but children learn hard skills like shoveling, seeding, harvesting, and weeding, all of which can be carried with them throughout their lives. But perhaps the greatest benefit to children is the emotional one. By having gardens in schools, they are given the opportunity to learn about what it means to nurture and care for something. Through growing food, they explore their role as caretakers and see the impact of their actions and hard work. They learn to work together with one another and with the land. These are positive, early experiences that can change the course of their lives. Now that we have made our connections and we have all of our different pieces, let's put it all together and truly look at how school gardens are a tool for restorative justice. It begins by offering an alternative to exclusionary forms of discipline. Sometimes students do need to step away from the classroom and the school environment to cool down and to move forward. The garden offers a physical separation, but allows the child to remain part of the community. In addition, school gardens give the child a healthy outlet for their energy and their frustration via the meditative and interactive nature of gardening itself. The next big benefit is the opportunity to repair harm that school gardens can offer. The first way is by addressing cultural issues. For example, school gardens can be the place where educators and students talk about the racialized history of agriculture within the United States and the ways that that is perpetuated today through institutionalized racism. It is a way to begin repairing the relationship between the land and BIPOC students. Secondly, it shows students that even if they have made a mistake and they have harmed other people or the values of the community, they have the opportunity to still contribute to the needs of the community as they work to repair the harm that they have caused. They learn that they are valued members of the community. Additionally, students are able to participate in addressing the core issues that cause conflict, such as food insecurity, a disconnect from place and community, all of which can be solved by the school garden depending on its design and function. Now, if you remember, I said at the beginning that restorative justice is about relationship building, and that is a prime thing that can happen within school gardens. First of all, it's simply the nature of being in a collaborative space where students can work together, they can work with adults, they can work with community members, and all of this emphasizes teamwork towards conflict resolution. Secondly, school gardens offer the possibility to integrate community members into the school, which creates a greater investment from the local area into the students' education. It's not just the teachers and the students, it's the teachers, the students, their parents, and local community members all working together towards a valuable form of education. And finally, students are able to form a long-lasting and healthy relationship between themselves and the land. In this way, they learn the tangible skills of a sustainable future. They are part of nature, and nature is a part of them. It is a relationship that they can return to at different points of their lives because they have these early positive experiences now. I'd like to close with a disclaimer. I obviously do not know everything about restorative justice or about gardening or about schools or about anything really. But the point here is that just because something does not exist does not mean that we cannot imagine it. We owe it to children to provide them with the best chance of leading long, healthy, successful lives. And the ways that we have been doing that so far are not working for a majority of marginalized students. The beauty of restorative justice is that it is relationship oriented. It is about being invested in the success of the people around us because that is also our own success. It is time to go from a justice that harms to a justice that heals. Thank you.